Lumon live webinar, Buying Your Dream Home in the South of France. This is a special interactive webinar to provide some insight and expertise in buying property over in France. So my name's Jonathan Watson, one of the senior traders at Lumon, an international payment specialist. I'm going to be your host this evening. I'm going to take a deep dive into the French property buying process and some of the questions and some of the points that I wish I knew that before moments. Try and get those questions to you nice and early in that process. So I'm shortly going to hand over to my expert panel for their intros. But before then, some information for you, please, audience. We want the webinar to be as interactive as possible. So you should see a question box for you to raise any questions that you have. To be totally honest, we do struggle sometimes to get through all of the questions, but we will do our best to answer everything out of the session, which is actually being recorded, will be emailed to you afterwards as well for you to go through. But yes, please do submit those questions and we will try and get through as many as we can. So let me hand over to my panel. Start with Asher McKinnery, our property specialist, Director of Sales at Fracct Homes. Over to you, Asher.
Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks for including us in this webinar. I'm a San Francisco native, specialize in property development out here, been licensed real estate agent in California for 20 years, moved out to Antibes 4 years ago, developed a niche for selling property to Americans on the French Riviera. So we've developed an ecosystem for our clients to utilize, from financing to visa experts, tax advice, private schools, architects, general contractors, anything that they might need to plug and play, so to speak, into the French Riviera. So we want to sell them an apartment, a villa, but we also want to make sure that they feel comfortable with every step of the move, whether they're buying a second home or relocating with their family or coming to retire.
Perfect, thank you, Asher. And yeah, I think that's one of the themes we're going to have for the evening is our experts literally live and breathe that life and have been through a lot of what you as a potential client will be going through, which really puts them in a very, very strong position to help. So thank you, Asher. And Dinelle Nazu, over to you, our visa and paperwork specialist, CEO and founder of Renaissance.
Thank you, Jonathan. It's lovely to be here tonight. Already know the folks on the panel, and so that makes a nice team vibe. So yeah, we started Renaissance as a relocation company 10 years ago. We're celebrating our 10 years this year, and basically it's our main mission was to address the three main needs that people have when they move abroad. You want accurate information that pertains to your particular case. You want hands-on personalized assistance. I'm going to walk you through it. And then you also want a community, not only of other like-minded expats, but also of reliable professionals like we have here today, people you can count on to get what you need done. So we've always kind of been in a dot connector position as relocation agents. We also do have a brokerage license, so we do also help with people finding properties, so whether to rent or to buy. And yeah, basically our mission is to help people achieve their French lifestyle dream.
Brilliant, thanks so much, Dinelle. I look forward to hearing some of your points this evening. Really important stuff that sometimes gets overlooked in the early stages. People looking at the property and planning what they're going to do with the property. There's actually a few other things to be thinking about as well in terms of, as you say, the visa and paperwork, which of course you can help with. So thank you, Dinelle. And then Thomas, Mr. Marin, over to you, our wealth management specialist, partner at Bourbon Franks. Thanks, Thomas.
I think you're muted.
Oh, sorry, Tom, I think you're on mute. Thank you.
Rookie mistake. I hope you can hear me now. Okay, good. So thank you for inviting me on the webinar. I am one of the partners at Blevins Franks. For those of you viewers who aren't familiar with Blevins Franks, we provide strategic tax and financial planning advice to people who are either resident in France or thinking about becoming resident in France. The company's been doing this for a long time. Blevins Franks has had its 50th anniversary this year. I myself have not been at Blevins Franks for quite that long. I've been at the company for 10 years. I founded the offices in Béziers and Toulouse, and more recently, I'm based in the Côte d'Azur in a place called Valbonne with my family. And as you said, Jonathan, earlier, one of the benefits of what we do is that we've lived the situation. We've been through all of the quirks and foibles with the French system that many of our clients will face. Really, our objective at Blevins Franks is to look at a person's situation or a couple's situation and work out how they can really optimize for the French tax system.
Fantastic, Thomas. Yes, your insight will be valuable for this. So myself, Jonathan, I would say I'm a payment specialist here at Lumon. I'm one of the senior traders. I've been here for 15 years. Lumon's been trading for 25 years. Last year, we transferred over £7 billion worth of currency in and out of France, but we also deal with a lot of clients in America and all over the world. So as well as a thorough understanding of the French property transaction process, and just like the other panelists, having worked with lots of other partners in this space, I've also got a good understanding of the foreign exchange market, which is changing literally by the second. So I've got a real interest in what drives the currency markets. I'm always happy to share some of the latest forecasts and information on the rates. There's so much going on in the world at the moment to move the market. And I've been quoted in newspapers and also once appeared on television discussing Brexit. So thank you, all your panelists, for your introductions there. Let's get into the nitty-gritty. Asher, I'm going to start with you. Just for any of our audience, perhaps at some of the earlier stages of looking at property transaction over in France, what's the actual buying process? What does that look like for anyone considering this, please?
If you're considering buying a property in France, I recommend you talk to a French banker if you're going to need a loan. If you're buying cash, obviously they should talk to Lumon. And then you'll notice a few things when you start shopping if you're coming out of the American market. One, there's no address listed on properties, whereas the US, it's obligatory to put an address for a property that you're selling. In France, they don't put an address because it's not common for agents to work on exclusive sales instructions. Whereas in the United States, it's 99% of agents are signed up on an exclusive right to sell. We're able to share the address. We're able to invite our clients, other brokers' clients to our listing. There's much less fear about a client theft, whether it's a buyer or a seller. So that's one of the things that's a hard pill to swallow in the French market. And what comes along with that is that there's multiple listings for the same property. So you might be shopping for a villa in Valbonne, where Thomas lives with his family. Great place to live, a lot of schools, close to beaches, not so far up into the mountains that you're too rural, easy to get to skiing as well. Love it in Valbonne. I've got a beautiful home for sale right there. And you could see 4 or 5 agencies listing the same property. Different photos, depending on if they're advertising with fees included or no fees included, whether they've shaved a couple points off, you could see price differentiation. So that's also hard to understand for people coming out of the American market. And something else is that when you contact agencies in France, they're looking to pick you up as a buyer. Obviously, we're out here, we're wanting to get as much business as possible, but in the US, there's heavy protections involved when you get into a dual agency situation. And in France, they'll put you into dual agency situation undisclosed. In the US, it's completely illegal. So those are just a few of the things. There's a lot of bait and switch in France. If people think they've got a hot property and they put it under contract, or it's even been sold for 3 or 4 months. You might walk by their agency in Antibes or Nice or wherever you are down there on holiday, and oh, that's a great apartment for 500,000 with a view and 2 bedrooms. You walk in, it says they speak English, and they might say, oh, that one's not available, but why don't you tell us what you are interested in? In the US, that's considered fraud, bait and switch. It's illegal. You could lose your license for that. So it's dangerous waters to be operating in as an American if you're not educated.
Okay, Asher, thank you for that. And certainly one of the differences I've noticed is timescales. You know, sometimes a deal can close quite quickly in the States, can't it? You know, within a month or so. That's not uncommon in my experience. Whereas in France, things take a little bit longer. So that's certainly something prospective buyers should be prepared for, right?
If you have cash in the US, I could get you closed in 10 to 14 days. In France, you'd be looking at 2 months probably for cash, and up to 4 months with financing. And if there's holidays that hit, like right now, it's All Saints holiday hitting in France, it takes longer. It takes longer. The notary really takes a lot of control once the promesse de vente gets signed through the final act of sale. So logistically, it's much different. The realtor is offering more of a letter of intent that the parties agree to, and then the heavy load shifts to the notary. And depending on the notary, you can either have control over them because you've used them a lot, or you lose control because they're not so responsive. It really depends.
That's it. So the promised event, that I would call as well similar to the compromis de vente, the initial sales contract, and that happens fairly soon after the offer's accepted, once obviously everything's been considered. So I think one of the good things about buying in France is you get that legal bit out the way quite quickly, don't you? Because once that compromis de vente is signed, the buyer is pretty much locked in, and you know, okay, it might take a few weeks, gives you plenty of time to organize all the other exciting things for your property, but you're pretty much locked into the purchase quite early on. So there's certainty there, isn't there?
Yeah, there's a bit of certainty, and not much changes from the promesse de vente, compromis de vente to the final act. Obviously, if you've got a contingency, things could change. I like to have my clients get comfortable with the financier up front so they know what their financing looks like, and then we come in and write a contingency-free offer. It's always stronger. A seller's going to look at that much more favorable than something with contingencies. Oftentimes you write with a contingency, the seller's going to say, come back when you're ready, or come back when you've got your financing cleaned up. So there's also the 10-day retraction period that's built in. So you get that promesse de vente, compromis de vente signed. You've got 10 days to walk for anything. In France, there's a lot less disclosures for a residential sale than in the US. They have a diagnostic report. In the US, it's a lot of disclosures, especially in California. You're talking about a lot of paperwork, a lot of things to sign off on, a lot of legalese. In France, it's less. You got one diagnostic report, usually covers a lot of the stuff unless there's abnormal circumstances. And then for apartments, copropriété, notes, budget, stuff like that for 3 years, which would be similar to homeowners association documents here, which I'm very familiar with being a multifamily developer in California. So there's a lot of differences and a lot of similarities, but you just need to be educated and need to be working with someone that you're psychologically compatible with.
Thank you, Ashley. Yeah, that's really helpful. So really key things from you, you mentioned it a few times, it's the financing. Obviously, we're generally talking about very expensive properties in that beautiful, absolutely beautiful part of the world. You know, quite easy to get into the 7 figures there. And yeah, getting your financing worked out quite early in the process is a good idea. That makes sense. So talking of finance, Tom, let's turn to you. When we're talking about finances, what if clients have their money obviously invested still in the United States or in the UK, what does that look like? What are some of the things they need to consider for moving some of their wealth from overseas into France? What do they need to look for?
I think that the first thing to say is that having investments outside of France normally doesn't work. If somebody is becoming French resident, then it's not usually tax efficient for the French system. So in the UK, if I take the UK as an example, a lot of people in the UK will have ISAs and UK investment bonds, which are very efficient for the UK system, but they just don't work very well with the French system. And the problem is that if they move to France without doing any tax planning, they could leave themselves exposed to potentially 30% tax on all of the gains, even if they're not necessarily utilizing those gains, even if they're not drawing an income. They can find themselves having an ongoing liability to tax. So I think it's really important, if somebody is thinking about moving to France as a tax resident, making a permanent move and spending most of the year in France, then they really need to look at that before they make the move. There are different investment structures that you can use in France. Quite commonly, one that we use is something called assurance vie, which is very widely used, not just by Brits and expats that move to France, but also by the native French population. So around about 60% of the French population have this type of investment, and it works really well because it shields money from ongoing taxation. It also has some really important advantages when it comes to succession planning. So those are the kind of, that's just one example. Those are the kind of things that we can look at for people that are thinking about making the move to France. The only thing I would say is that Blevins Franks, although we are experts on the French tax system and indeed the UK tax system, we're not experts on the US side of things. So we can't help directly with any US queries.
Thank you, Tom. And does your tax liability then, we've had a question submitted, thank you very much, to Mitchell Aldrich. He's asking, does your tax liability become then France, or does it remain your home country, UK or US?
It depends where you're spending most of your time, ultimately.
Okay. It's the 180-day rule, is it? Sorry to cut across you.
Yeah, that's right. The bottom line is that if you are spending more than 183 days in France, then the French authorities will consider you to be a French tax resident. Now, we do encounter certain situations where actually somebody will qualify perhaps under two tax systems. So they will qualify as a UK tax resident, but also qualify as a French tax resident. But in those situations, where the UK is concerned, you have a tax treaty that kind of resolves that. So in the end, you can only be resident in one country. One of them must prevail. But it's important to understand that. It's important to look, particularly when we're looking at a client's situation, one of the things that we're very clear about and look to establish really early on is, where is our client tax resident?
Fantastic, Thomas. Well, one of the themes, again, we'll get from this evening is the importance of being prepared and having these important conversations early on so you don't get caught out. So yeah, certainly any more questions there, good to be speaking in advance to us. So Danelle, let's turn to you. Potentially more banana skins here with visas and residency. We've had a question submitted in advance, just asking, how long can I stay in France without a visa?
Yeah, it's a good thing to get accurate information on before you come. Well, that depends on what passport you hold. If you have an EU passport, you can stay forever. Also, if you're married to a European national, then you don't need a visa either. If you are coming from the UK or the US or other Western country, you can do what they call the Schengen shuffle. So you can stay 90 days within any 180-day period. and then you have to leave the European Union for 90 days before you come back. Most people, if they need to have a visa, they will apply for a long stay visa, which allows them to stay for up to a year. There's two different types of long stay visas. There's one that can be converted to a residency permit, and that you can actually renew every year in France. You don't have to go back. Or there's the temporary long stay visa, and that when it's expired, you have to go back to your home country and request another one.
Fantastic. Okay, Danelle, that's really, really helpful. So you really, if you're going to look at becoming a French resident, what are some of the preparation points for someone looking for a permanent move? What can they be doing in advance, please? And I guess, is that different if you're coming from the UK or the US or anywhere else in the world?
It kind of depends on what you want to do. If you don't have an EU passport or an EU nationality spouse, then what type of visa you apply for will depend on what you want to do in France. Obviously, if you want to work, then you'll need a work authorization. If you don't, then you'll probably get a visitor visa. It doesn't mean a tourist visa; it just means that you're a visitor and that you're not working in France. So there's a lot of different options. It really kind of depends on how you want to live in France.
Fantastic. Okay, Danelle, really helpful. And again, best to reach out to Danelle directly. It's so difficult to, in a handful of questions, discuss all the ins and outs of visas and some of the other elements of this. So thank you for a snapshot there. And I've had a question, what is the difference between Lumon and a typical bank? So Lumon, as a payment specialist, one of the main advantages of us is exchange rates. We can demonstrate savings over the banks out there. We do a sort of mystery shopper every so often, and daily I'm speaking to clients who have got a bank account, and we can check the exchange rate against their banks. That's the fundamental point, a better rate of exchange, which is great. If you're spending 7-figure sum, large 6-figure sum, or however much, even if you're just doing your monthly transfers, a couple of cents here or there, it can be quite a big difference in your back pocket. So that's one of the main advantages. As a broker, we buy currency from multiple sources, and we're able to undercut the rates offered by banks and different options out there. But it's really about the service as well. What we can offer are some different foreign exchange contracts to fix rates in advance. So if we look at the dollar, if you're looking at buying euros, let's just say you're buying a lovely property in the south of France for €1 million. So at the start of the year, that would have cost you about $102,000, $103,000 at the very lowest rates. Unfortunately, this summer, that's gone up quite dramatically. It's actually going to be more like $116,000, $170,000 at some of the more expensive points. That's quite a big jump, isn't it? $150,000 or so difference. And it's because the US dollar has unfortunately got weaker. Asha, I might just pull you in here. Do you remember when we met in May and I was sharing some forecasts on rates? What did Lumon say? Don't embarrass me here.
No, you're really good. You guys hosted a great event in Gulf of Juan, Vallauris, at the beach there, with some nice food.
Beautiful place.
And some great partners that are specialists in financing for Americans. I was happy to hear you talk, and I had been tracking what was happening in the US because it affects my clients. 99% of my business is US buyers. And you predicted that the fall was going to be rocky for the US, and we've continued to see rates slide quite a bit. They started to slide in winter and have continued to. So your forecast was spot on.
Thank you. And I must, not take full credit. I'm no market wizard, and so I've done this job for 15 years. No one on this planet knows exactly what the rates are going to do. But the point is we can offer some options to fix and lock in the rate Now, the predictions I'd shared with Asher and everyone at our event was that a majority of the forecasters that we look at, about 50 different banks, were forecasting a weaker dollar. So it's then up to the client what they want to do with that. Some people said, right, we're going to lock in our rate. Others wanted to wait to see what happens. There's no real right or wrong answer. It's really about what suits you. But the point is, we offer an option to fix the exchange rate. Asher was talking about how this buying process, from the compromis de vente to the actual acte de vente, you can be talking about a good 2 or 3 months. We don't know what rates are going to do tomorrow, let alone in 3 months' time. So we offer some options to fix exchange rates in, and we can provide all sorts of tailored research, really develop a bit of a strategy on your foreign exchange element, so you can try and manage that side of things. So yes, those are some of the benefits of us: exchange rates, but also service to guide you through the market and try and help you with the timing of your transaction. So thank you for that question. I hope that helps. Right, Asher, let's turn back to you. What are some of the common pitfalls that you see for your buyers? What are some of the things that, you know, people, once they're getting into the nitty gritty, think, oh, I wish I'd known that, or you're sort of saying at the end, I told you so. You know, what are some of the common pitfalls you see there, please?
Well, I'd probably deal with 2 things. One is notary fee. You got to put out that the notary fee, which I didn't mention in my opener, is going to be about 8% for existing home product. A lot of the time, if you're buying new, we've got a great partnership with Cojadim. They've got a bunch of beautiful properties in the area. I'd love to sell you new. And a lot of times they can neutralize the notary fee, which is a great savings. They also sell with a guarantee. But if you're buying...
Sorry to cut in, Asher. What's the sort of difference then? So if it's new build, what sort of notary fees, just a rough percentage is it then instead of the 8? Or...
I mean, we were normally quoting 2 to 3, but over the summer, Cojadim was telling everyone comped notary fees on closing out a lot of the projects that they had in Saint-Tropez, in Nice, and a couple other places. So they'll offer heavy incentives.
Wow. And I'd just like to, sorry, I know I asked you the question, but point out these notary fees. You think, oh, this is all money. Wow, the notary's charging 8%. It's not all going to the notary, is it? The notary in France acts almost like a tax collector. So that's the only extra you pay on top of the property, and the notary handles everything, all any other potential taxes. Is that right? That's all you're paying extra.
I mean, that's the trade-off. If you're living here in California and you've got $1 million home, you're going to be paying easily $1,000 a month for the rest of your home ownership in property tax. In France, they take it up front. If you're dealing with homes over 2 million, the structure's different, but the majority of my buyers are under 2 million, and there are ways to save. So notary fee is one. Getting comfortable with new, I recommend to people, but I always I quote people 8% for existing, because if you're shopping at $1 million, that's 80,000 extra euro, and that's big. You need to factor that in. I mean, a little bit of pitfalls. Earlier this year, I was closing a deal in Villefranche in February, and it was right when the tariff storm started to hit. I could see the writing on the wall, and I told one of my clients, hey, look, talk to a currency broker. I'm busy, I got a trial, I'm too busy. All right, followed up in a couple weeks. Hey, did you talk to the currency broker? No, I've been really busy. A month goes by and the dollar fell 5% over 30 days. I think it was 5%. And when you're talking about $1 million, this was a $500,000 purchase. But when you're talking about $1 million, just to make the math easy, that's 50,000 euro that you're going to lose in the course of a month. So that's why it's really important to lay out your financial strategy at first. If you're buying something in the US, you're dealing with just dollars. You don't have to worry about it. But when you're dealing with overseas real estate transaction, you need to get qualified from a financier who's going to service the expat community. There's not that many. Some want to gouge you on a down payment. I like to offer my clients 30% down. A lot of banks, the minimum's 50. And then you need to hook up with an expert like Lumon, because if you're talking to the 50 forecasters, like you said, and you've got the good advice, then it's, hey, if you've got a down payment money, secure the rate now so you don't get slaughtered in the fall. I'm telling people now who I've gotten contract and they said, oh, geez, we just checked the rate. It's so expensive on a $1 million purchase. You know, it's a 150,000 more euro. And then the notary fee, it's quite a bit more. You know, we got to wait for the dollar to come down. And I tell them, look, we've had a historic high for the dollar. Luckily, since 2022, when we hit parity, that was an abnormal strength for the dollar. Right now, the dollar is actually still strong, not strong compared to 2022. But if you go back to, let's say, 2008, 2010, 2012, where a euro was costing the American market $1.20, $1.24, $1.28. So we're still, you know, 10% strong on kind of a historic trend. So it's still a good time to buy. Couple that with France being on a kind of a historic, lengthy buyer's market. So it's still a very good time to invest in France. Doubling back to the new homes, France is a great country. They do a lot of things really well. History, culture, food, music, theater, opera, you name it, they've got it. It's an amazing place to live, very sensory rich. With the socialism in place, they do an extraordinary job of putting new housing in the market. I think most Americans are surprised when they see how much new housing is available and what the pricing is. It's quite affordable, and it's available in every major metropolitan market in France. The one thing is that the French developers do not have a platform tailored to target American buyers. So we're working on that. We're working with a couple developers to bring rich marketing where we narrate on a green screen the project and the area and say, look, Americans, this is available for you to purchase. It's well priced. You buy it with a guarantee, you save on notary fee, and you can come over here coupled with concierge services that Danelle and Thomas offer and live in peace and tranquility for a good price. You've got an excellent quality of life in France. And with guys on the Forex side like you can feel good about buying, feel secure about getting in that potential 3 to 4 month contract and save on the Forex too.
Oh, thank you, Asher. And, you know, Goldman is seeing euro dollar going up to 125. So I said it's become $150,000 more expensive since February to buy that €1 million property. If that prediction is right going into the new year, that's another $100,000 on top. And you're absolutely right. Historically, the dollar is still actually quite strong against the euro. The lowest point, well, you go back sort of 20 odd years, then it was very, very weak. When it first started out, euro dollar was sort of 150s, but 2015, 10 years ago, it was up at 140, and today we're sort of 116. So yeah, historically, the dollar is still quite strong against the euro, just not quite as strong as some of those more recent peaks. But thank you. Yes, the foreign exchange element really is very, very important. So we've had a question. Yeah.
I'd like to nail in one point that you just said there as it pertains to buying your dream home in France. You know, 116 to 124 from Goldman, who's not wet behind the ears, they're like the best in the world. It means that people can still save by shopping in the next 3 to 6 months for their dream home next summer, €100,000 buying today. So, you know, that's a big point to drive home. Shop now and save yourself that extra 10% slide, because most likely Goldman's going to hit the nail on the head.
There you go. There you go. So we can keep clients updated throughout. So, yes, I mean, just going back to the buying in that area, are there any drawbacks from buying in the beautiful French Riviera. So I was lucky enough to be there this May. It's such a beautiful, amazing place. I mean, let's take out the currency, let's take out some of the other points. It's just an investment by itself, isn't it? I mean, it's such a popular part of the world. How can it ever lose value? I shouldn't say that. But look, it's just such a beautiful place to have a home, and you can just see why it's so popular. We will come on later. I'll get some of your personal point de resistance, petit pois, je ne sais quoi, of why you love France so much, but we'll do that at the end. Clive Walters has said, will you all send your contact details after the seminar? Yes, we will, Clive. All audience members will get an email with all of our details so you can speak to us more detail. Thomas, let's come back to you. Finances. When we're looking at investing in France, we talked about the assurance fee. That is one of the, I think we talk about these wrappers. Is there any other sort of specific, you know, French sort of tax wrappers? A bit like we have the ISA in the UK, or in the US, you have these different sort of tax saving schemes from government. Is there anything like that that clients should be aware of, please?
Yeah, there are a couple of others that I think are noteworthy. So you've got the Livret A, which I suppose is, for any Brits on this listening to this webinar, it's the equivalent of a cash ISA. So it's just a very tax efficient cash savings plan, and most people that have savings have some sort of Livret A with their bank, but it's quite limited. So you can only put just over 22,000 euros into it. So it's not, for people with reasonable amounts of wealth, it's not going to make much of a dent in terms of your overall tax planning. There are also accounts called PEA, which is Plan Épargne en Action, which effectively is a share savings plan. With our clients, we don't tend to use those so much. We tend to use assurance fee because it is just so much more flexible. And what we're also doing quite commonly is we're actually using assurance fee policies that are based outside of France, because although assurance fee has been around for a long time, and I mean, it's been around basically since the end of the Second World War. So it's really entrenched in French culture and French finances. But thanks to the European Union, you don't have to set up an assurance fee in France. So there are various different countries in Europe where you can do that. And we've done our due diligence on them. And quite often we look at Luxembourg as being one of them, and also the Republic of Ireland. If I can use Luxembourg as an example, why it appeals to people over using a French assurance fee is, first of all, it's multi-currency. So it means you can receive an income in euros or sterling or dollars according to your needs. But also it benefits from the Luxembourg investor protection regime, which is 100% of the value that you're investing. So whereas in France you only get 70,000 euros of protection from the French government, in Luxembourg there's no upper limit. So Luxembourg is attractive for that reason. And you may think, well, you know, it's a pretty unlikely scenario that, you know, a Luxembourg company could go bust, and I would tend to agree on that. But we have seen over the last couple of years, you know, the Silicon Valley Bank ran into trouble, and also the Credit Suisse as well in Switzerland had to be bailed out. So these situations can arise from time to time, and just having the Luxembourg protection is it just adds that extra peace of mind, I suppose. But yeah, there are various different investment structures, but what we tend to find is that for people with wealth, assurance fee is a fairly central planning structure, not just for the ongoing tax advantages, but also, as I said earlier, for the succession advantages when it comes to French inheritance planning.
Perfect. Okay, Tom, thank you very much for useful information, getting the most tax efficient management of your wealth. So now let's come back to you, obviously we've talked about visas and also buying property in France. Do you actually need to have a visa or be the French resident to purchase property?
You don't need to be French nationality. You don't need to be a French resident. You don't even need to have a a visa for France. So no, you can buy a property and never even set foot on it.
Fantastic, nice and simple. That's great. And the buying process in France, of course, is the same wherever you're from in the world, isn't it? You know, you're actually buying in France, so you're subject to that process there, which Asha and I had discussed. So that's great. Keeps it nice and easy for people.
Since we're talking about finances, we can also say that a lot of people assume that, you know, if they're non-residents and they're buying, you know, say a second home or something in France where they don't intend to be resident, they think that they just assume that they can't have financing. But actually, we've had a lot of clients who were non-residents and they managed to get a French mortgage when they bought a property. So.
Perfect. There you go. So worth speaking to the experts on that one. And do people, we've had a question submitted here, how do I let the authorities know when I've arrived? I guess this is for some of these timescales, visas and things. What's the process there? What do you need to do?
Yeah, so there is a lot of confusion about when the visa starts, and you know, when do you have to register it by, and when does it expire, and all that business. So typically you apply for the visa online. That's the first part of the process, and then you'll make an appointment and you'll go to whatever the visa processing center is, usually in an area that has a French consulate. This is in your home country, and they're usually pretty quick. You usually get your visa about 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, whatever, after that appointment, and that they will determine when your visa starts at that point. So you say, I'm going March 1st, and they make it start March 1st. You don't have to go to France on March 1st. In fact, you can go pretty much whenever you want until it expires. So there's no deadline in terms of when you need to travel on that visa. But when you do travel with the visa, say you arrive March 15th, for example, then you have 3 months to validate that visa. And here we're talking about the visas that are resident permit visas. You have 3 months to validate that online with the Office of Immigration. And that kind of starts the clock in terms of your year to exchange your driver's license, and a couple other administrative things start on that date of validation.
Okay, and is it the VTS visa? Is that the one? You've got
It's VLS TS. That's the one that needs to be validated online. Yeah.
Online. Perfect. Okay, very helpful. Thank you. Well, actually, let's come back to you. How is the market generally in South France? Say, I assume it's just always doing very well, but what's been some of the latest trends there?
Well, that's what people think. I mean, I've had clients that have purchased property 12 years ago and sold it 12 years later for the same price, and they were as blown away as I was. But if you pay too much in the beginning, then you're not going to be able to get your investment out. People are not trading property as often in Europe as in the US. You get US people coming over and being a little naive, saying, I'm going to buy a property, I'm going to fix it up, and I'm going to flip it and make money. And if you don't speak French and you don't have a background in real estate development, I would not recommend doing that. This is more, what we're doing is more for people who want to have a secondary residence. You can operate it and gain income, net profit on short-term rental. I've sold properties in Villefranche to folks that are making money, that use the property once a quarter, as a hotel room, 2-bedroom, kitchen. You're more comfortable than a hotel. You're in your own house. Walk to the beach, walk to the train station. They use it for 10 days. They pack up, they leave. It's rented out the rest of the time because the French Riviera has an extraordinary demand all season. The people always think about the French Riviera, Saint-Tropez, Ile Marguerite, and come down and party for summer. And there are a lot of people there in summer, but the best times for me living in the Côte d'Azur is autumn, when the tourists leave and the dogs get the beaches back, and winter. We like to ski and the mountains are close by, but it's a very moderate climate since it's such a steep altitude, a coastal shelf. It's a very dramatic coastal shelf. So in January this year, I was skiing in the morning. I had one of the best days of my life. I drove back down to the beach in Antibes and I put the paddleboard in the water for sunset. So we get a lot of people coming in Nice from the north that will do the same thing. They'll go to Nice, they'll use the Promenade des Anglais, they'll go shopping, they'll enjoy the sunshine because it's much warmer in the south of France than it is in the north of France, let alone Nordic or Scandinavian countries. So there's a built-in tourist market. So that is one way to make money. I wouldn't recommend fixing and flipping. Kind of got off track there on my answer. Sorry if I strayed from the question. Did I answer the question?
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. It's good to get a snapshot of the lifestyle there. And that's actually one of my dreams, is to go skiing in the morning and then spend the afternoon on the beach. So yeah, maybe I'll have to look you up over there at some point, Asher. Okay, Tom, let's come back to you. Look, unfortunately, one of the things you have to consider in life, what do they say? The two guarantees, death and taxes. What do clients buying in France need to be aware of from an inheritance tax point of view or inheritance planning?
Yeah, it's a bit of a gloomy topic, unfortunately, but it's one that we all have to think about. And yeah, I suppose there are two elements to think about when it comes to the French inheritance system, and this applies to anybody who's thinking of buying property in France. So the first thing is that we have in France a system of forced heirship, and actually it only applies to people that have children. But if you do have children, then they are automatically entitled to a certain proportion of your French estate, and also if you're a French resident, that could apply to your global estate. So if you have one child, then they get 50% by default. 2 children get 2/3, and 3 or more children get 3/4 of your overall estate, which can be disadvantageous for a surviving spouse. So that's one thing to bear in mind. The other thing to bear in mind is tax. So under the French tax system, the tax rate depends on how much the asset or the value of the asset that's passing to the beneficiary, but also the relationship between the deceased and the beneficiary. So for example, children in the direct line, they pay, the succession tax that they pay can be as high as 45%, but it can be as low as 5% depending on the amount. By contrast, with stepchildren or people who are not related outside of the bloodline, it's 60%. There is a exemption for spouses, so spouses can inherit from each other tax-free. But in terms of just going back to the forced heirship issue, there are some certain planning tools and certain planning strategies that people can employ to circumvent that system, circumvent those rules, and that's one of the areas that we deal with. So an example would be, sounds quite strange to say it, but in France you can change your marriage regime. You can effectively go along to a notaire and change the way that your marriage is categorized under French law, and that actually has an impact on how your assets will be distributed when you die. So yeah, there's lots to think about. The French system is very different, certainly, to the UK system, and it just requires some planning. So that's one of the areas that we can potentially help with.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you, Thomas. Right, we're approaching the last 10 minutes. Time certainly does fly. If I can just go around each of you and just give us a little snapshot of some of the things you love about France, and even though we've gently covered it before, just some of the points that you really recommend prospective buyers strongly consider in the early stages relating to your area of expertise. So, Thomas, if I could start with you, please.
I think that one of the things that I particularly like about France is the variety of the landscapes. It's just such a varied country. You can go to, where I am in the Côte d'Azur, and as Ash has mentioned, it's a really beautiful place with the mountains and the sea close by. Montpellier, where Denel is as well, is a really beautiful town. But if you go up north as well, if you go up to Brittany, it's just got a completely different vibe to it, it's just it's such a great, for somebody that likes hiking, likes going out walking. It's such a great country to live in. What I also like about France is the directness of the French people. Some people call it rude. I would say direct, but I appreciate it. I think it's nice. It's a good thing.
You know where you stand. There's no no confusion. Oh, thank you, Thomas. That's brilliant. And any other points for prospective buyers from a wealth management point of view? A must do before you look at all of this.
I think one of the things that we find is that people will buy property in France, and once they start spending a bit of time in France, they think, oh, this is nice. I could spend more time here. And that tends to be the point that when they think about becoming French tax resident. And at that point, it's just a case of looking at their overall situation, looking at their assets, their income, how it's all positioned at the moment, and thinking about how that can be reorganized, restructured to be as tax efficient as possible for the French system. So that's really our forte. It's really understanding how the French system interacts with people's income and assets. And of course, we've got expertise in the UK system, and also in various other EU countries as well. So sometimes actually we have situations where people are moving to France, but they actually move via another country. And there can be some really good tax planning reasons to do that, but that's one of the things that we will potentially look at depending on the situation.
Okay, Thomas, thank you very much. And Denel, come to you. I'm sure with your areas of expertise, you see some pretty crazy situations. We could probably do a whole webinar on that. But yes, your reasons for loving France, and yeah, just a couple of mementos for people to take away. Thank you.
Right. Well, Thomas kind of took mine, but but there are plenty of other reasons to enjoy your life in France. Another thing that I think we don't always have in mind is that France is very central and has great connections for travel. So it's a good travel hub. If you can stay in France, there's lots of things to see in France, but there's also tons of easy access, low cost flights and trains into wonderful places, even the Canaries. I guess what kind of a word to the wise in terms of all the administrative and bureaucratic hurdles. I think people, it's difficult on the one hand because culturally, especially if you're coming from the US or the UK, we tend to follow the rules and we like things to be very transparent, and there's a process to follow, and there's somebody who's in charge of this, and everything is pretty cut and dried. And that's not the way the French operate. It's much more high context culture, and the French are artists. They like to keep it fresh, and yes, there might be a process, but it's usually not very well defined, and they like to keep a little bit of poetic license to say, well, this time we're going to ask you for this, and well, I prefer this person's clothing than the other, or whatever. I mean, you don't necessarily know what decisions are being based on. So our motto is patience, perseverance, and wine, and you'll get through it. So.
I like the last one there. That will get you through most things, won't it? We haven't even discussed that yet. How do we get through an hour talking about France and not mention the wine? Well, coming over to you, Asha. Thank you very much, Danelle. Yes, some points to leave us with. You've sold the dream for me. I mean, yeah, I think I need to look at some of your properties. Might need to look at some financing options. But yeah, over to you, please, Asha.
Yeah, we want to be the one-stop shop. We've got everything posted. We're highly visible, and we're open to helping anyone. Specifically Americans coming out of markets like my own, San Francisco, California, LA, New York, stuff like that. I think the devil's in the details, and like Danelle said, if you like wine, France has got a lot of it for really good pricing. For me, a small anecdote, living in France, I stopped by the boulangerie on the way home a little while back, and at 6 p.m. they're piping hot baguette for €1.35. As a San Franciscan, we pride ourselves on high quality bread, but they normally make it in the morning here. So come 6 p.m., all the good ones have been picked over, and there's nothing coming out hot. I mean, I think France is one of the US's oldest allies, and we have a special relationship, but we are fundamentally diametrically opposed. In the US, we've got a can-do attitude, and in France, a lot of the time, the first four answers are going to be, it's complicated, it's impossible, no. And if you're persistent, it'll be maybe, okay, let's work together. Back to some of the other stuff about French culture, I appreciate it because there's a built-in politesse, manners with the vous. So people are formal with each other. It's more like being in the military almost when you're walking around France. I like to wear a smile and tell people bonjour, bonsoir, comment ça va, tac, 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 and be friendly with people and be polite. And that goes a long way. In the US, people are more, the customer's always right. I want it now. I want it yesterday. And you got to leave that attitude behind. It doesn't really work in France at all. You put on that attitude and you'll get somebody who says, time for a cigarette break, and you can wait until eternity for that one. So remember to bring your manners. And I think pricing, I'm selling an apartment right now in Antibes for $279,000, fully renovated. For that price in San Francisco, you couldn't even get a one bedroom on socialized below market rate housing. So don't fool yourselves. If you're out there watching or you're listening on replay, you can't afford to live in France. And with this panel of experts here, we will help get you through. We're ecosystem, your structure, your support to get you through, from purchase to finance to Forex to tax. One follow-up on the tax stuff, as American specialists, we do have SEC licensed folks to manage portfolios coming from the US and lend against them. And I also have tax experts for the US. So Thomas, you said you didn't have stuff like that, but we do. We've got a great partner in Monaco called Amber Lake, and they do have a rare SEC licensing to manage US portfolios, take them in custodianship in Monaco, and lend against them in France. So we help people save while lending, and we can earn on their portfolio. So I think we're about out of time. Jonathan, you got anything else there?
I mean, I could carry on all night, Asha. I'm sure we all could. Thank you so much for your input. It's really great to hear some of your experiences in France, and I think you're absolutely right. Some of the things that make it quite different from the UK and the US. We live at 100 miles an hour, stressed, everything's rushed, and in France it's the complete opposite, and it's amazing. And once you embrace that, it's great. It's the rest of the world's got it wrong, France have got it right. So thank you, everyone. From me, the currency fluctuations, we've talked about the dollar against the euro. Unfortunately, the pound hasn't been doing too well against the euro either. It's really been a story of a stronger euro this year, which of course is making buying in France a little bit more expensive, but they're all rates that we've had before. There's a lot going on, so a currency strategy really is very, very important. Just like the other panelists, you need to start looking at some of these things at quite an early point in the process, even if it's just to have our numbers and contacts there to ask us questions as things develop. We're all here to help you. We want things to go smoothly, and we want to make sure you're really happy with everything. So I think we've definitely reached the end of the time. I've really enjoyed this evening. I'm going to go and see if there's a boulangerie somewhere in London where I can get a steaming hot baguette. It's not going to happen. It's raining here. It's about 10 degrees. I think I need to book a flight to France. But no, thank you everyone for joining us, our fantastic audience. I'll let the panel wave and say goodbye as well. It's been a great evening. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks for
See you
having us.
again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.